The day Clint Eastwood silenced the courtroom, the grand marble courtroom buzzed with tension as the judge peered over his glasses at the man standing before him. It wasn't every day that a Hollywood legend found himself in court, but today was different. Clint Eastwood, the rugged, no-nonsense actor known for his roles in Dirty Harry and Unforgiven, stood at the defendant's table, his sharp eyes scanning the room. Despite his age, he carried himself with the same steely presence that had made him a cinematic icon. The case was a simple legal dispute, a property zoning issue concerning Eastwood's latest business venture. The judge, a middle-aged man with graying hair and an air of self-importance, chuckled as he glanced at the paperwork in front of him. "Well, Mr. Eastwood," the judge said with an amused smirk, "I have to say, I never expected to see you in my courtroom. What's next? John Wayne's ghost asking for a liquor license?" The courtroom erupted in polite laughter, but Eastwood remained stone-faced. He didn't like being the punchline of a joke, especially when the joke was on him. The judge continued, "So, let me get this straight. You're claiming the city's zoning board had no right to deny your permit because of national security concerns?" A few snickers rippled through the room. The opposing lawyer, a smug city attorney, leaned back in his chair, shaking his head. Eastwood finally spoke, his voice a quiet growl that demanded attention. "That's right, Your Honor." The judge let out a short laugh. "Oh, come on, Mr. Eastwood. National security? What are you, a secret agent now?" More laughter. Even the bailiff grinned. Eastwood didn't blink. Instead, he reached into his jacket pocket, withdrew a small black leather wallet, and flipped it open. The room went dead silent. Inside, gleaming under the fluorescent lights, was a United States Secret Service, USSS, badge. The judge's smirk vanished. His face drained of color. The city attorney's jaw dropped. The bailiff took an involuntary step forward, suddenly unsure of what was happening. "Mr. Eastwood," the judge said cautiously, "is this some kind of joke?" Eastwood tilted his head slightly, his piercing eyes locking onto the judge's. "Do I look like a comedian?" The room remained eerily still. Everyone knew Clint Eastwood had played lawmen on screen for decades, but no one had expected this. A Secret Service badge? Was this real? The judge cleared his throat, trying to regain control. "Mr. Eastwood, I need to ask, are you actually affiliated with the Secret Service?" Eastwood's lips curled into the faintest hint of a smirk. "Let's just say I've been asked to assist in certain matters of national interest before. In this case, it falls under that jurisdiction." The opposing lawyer, who had been gloating moments before, looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. The judge adjusted his glasses, leaning forward with renewed seriousness. "You're telling me that your property dispute is a matter of national security?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you," Eastwood replied, his voice unwavering, "and I'd suggest you take it seriously." For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, the judge sighed, nodding slightly. "All right, Mr. Eastwood, I'll allow you to present your case in full." The courtroom remained in stunned silence as Eastwood slowly put his badge away, his point made. And just like that, Clint Eastwood turned the tide. Not with a gun, not with a threat, but with the undeniable weight of authority and a lifetime's worth of presence. The judge took a deep breath, his hands gripping the gavel a little tighter than before. The atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted dramatically. Just moments ago, it had been a scene of laughter and light-hearted jabs at the aging Hollywood star. But now there was something electric in the air, something even the most hardened legal professionals couldn't ignore. The city attorney, previously smug and confident, was now visibly sweating. His hands trembled slightly as he shuffled through his notes, searching for something, anything, to regain control of the narrative. "Mr. Eastwood," the judge said, his voice calmer now, but undeniably more respectful, "would you care to explain exactly how this case pertains to national security?" Eastwood exhaled through his nose, then slowly reached into his pocket once more, not for his badge this time, but for a neatly folded document. He unfolded it with deliberate precision and handed it to his attorney, who stepped forward and placed it on the judge's desk. The judge hesitated before picking it up, almost as if he expected it to burn his fingers. His eyes scanned the document, and as he read, His eyebrows lifted higher and higher. The silence in the room became deafening. Finally, the judge let out a slow breath and leaned back in his chair. "Well, I'll be damned." The city attorney shifted nervously. "Your Honor?" The judge tapped the paper with a single finger. "It says here that this land Mr. Eastwood is trying to develop has been flagged by the Department of Homeland Security and the Secret Service for classified operations?" The entire courtroom gasped. "That's correct," Eastwood said flatly. "The location in question is part of a larger strategic plan. I was asked to acquire it quietly, but when that didn't happen, I had no choice but to bring this to court." The city attorney was practically stammering now. "But, Your Honor, I was under the impression that this was just a simple zoning issue. This can't possibly be." The judge shot him a look that shut him up immediately. "Counselor, are you telling me that you failed to do your due diligence on the property in question?" I, the attorney stammered. His face beat red. Eastwood remained silent, simply watching, his sharp gaze cutting through the nonsense like a knife. The judge turned back to Eastwood, clearly still processing everything. "Mr. Eastwood, am I to understand that you were operating under the authority of federal agencies when you sought to acquire this land?" "You are," Eastwood confirmed. "And am I correct in assuming that further litigation on this matter could pose certain risks to classified operations?" "You are." The judge sighed again, rubbing his temples. Then, in a move that shocked everyone, he picked up his gavel and slammed it down. "Case dismissed. The city will cease obstruction immediately." The opposing attorney practically choked on his own breath. "Why, Your Honor? You can't just—" The judge shot him a warning look. "Unless you'd like to explain to the Department of Homeland Security why you're interfering with their operations, I suggest you sit down and be quiet." The attorney dropped into his chair like a deflated balloon. Eastwood gave the judge a slow nod. "Appreciate your time, Your Honor." The judge nodded back, his expression serious. "And I appreciate the work you do, Mr. Eastwood, whatever that may be." With that, Clint Eastwood turned, adjusted his coat, and walked out of the courtroom, leaving behind a room full of stunned onlookers who had just witnessed something they would never forget. And just like that, he had once again proven that he was, and always would be, the man who got the last word. As Clint Eastwood strode toward the courtroom doors, the sound of his boots echoed through the silent chamber. No one dared to speak. Not the judge, not the city attorney, not even the bailiff. It was as if the weight of the moment had frozen everyone in place. Just as he reached for the door handle, a voice called out behind him. "Mr. Eastwood." Eastwood paused. Slowly, he turned, fixing his legendary steely gaze on the judge, who was still gripping the gavel tightly. "There's something I don't understand," the judge said, his tone cautious. "You've spent your life in Hollywood, playing lawmen, soldiers, and tough guys, but I've never heard of you having any real ties to the government. How is it that you have a Secret Service badge?" The courtroom leaned in, desperate for an answer. Even the city attorney, moments away from having a meltdown, couldn't help but listen. For a long moment, Eastwood just stared at the judge. Then, a small smirk played at the corner of his lips. "Not everything's on the record, Your Honor." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge narrowed his eyes. "So you're telling me you're actually an agent?" Eastwood shrugged, the smirk never leaving his face. "I'm telling you that I did a job once. A job for some people who don't like their business being talked about." The judge exhaled through his nose, clearly debating whether to push for more answers. But something in Eastwood's stare told him it would be pointless. "Fair enough," the judge said finally. "I have a feeling I wouldn't get much more out of you even if I tried." "You'd be right about that," Eastwood replied. The judge let out a small chuckle, shaking his head. "Well, Mr. Eastwood, whatever the case may be, you certainly know how to command a room. I don't think I've ever seen a court get this quiet before." Eastwood tipped his head. "You should see what happens when I walk into a bar." A few quiet chuckles broke the tension, but the moment didn't last long. Just then, the doors at the back of the courtroom swung open, and two men in dark suits stepped inside. Their movements were precise, calculated. They weren't just any men, they were government men. One of them, a tall man with close-cropped hair, nodded toward Eastwood. "Sir, we need to leave. Now." Eastwood nodded back, as if he had been expecting them. He turned one last time to the judge. "Good ruling, Your Honor." The judge studied him for a second longer before nodding. "Good luck, Mr. Eastwood, whatever it is you do." Without another word, Eastwood walked between the two agents and exited the courtroom. The heavy doors closed behind them with a resounding thud. For a long while, no one spoke. The judge, the attorneys, and the spectators all sat frozen, as if waking from some kind of surreal dream. Finally, the city attorney leaned forward, his face pale. What the hell just happened?" The judge rubbed his chin, staring at the closed doors. "I think we just saw history being made." Outside, Clint Eastwood stepped into a waiting black SUV. The agent in the passenger seat turned to him. "All clear, sir?" Eastwood glanced at the courthouse, then out into the city beyond. "Yeah," he muttered. "For now." With that, the SUV pulled away, vanishing into the streets, leaving nothing behind but questions, and a legend that would only grow with time. And that's how Clint Eastwood shut down a courtroom and left everyone wondering just how deep his ties to the government really went.